Hello, everyone. Well, I'm completely thrilled, as always, to have the chance for a conversation with Tamara and Michael, because I think theirs is actually one of the most interesting stories I've come across in modern luxury. As Charlotte said, they started a couture brand from nothing 9 years ago. And, you know, we think of couture as this quite kind of hallowed, quite traditional world, but these guys have proved that it doesn't have to be that you can have all that incredible quality, all that artisanship, and you can create a really modern brand. One of the expressions that I think is so interesting that you've used before, Michael, when we've spoken, is arrogant luxury and your problem with arrogant luxury and the degree to which your brand, Ralph Russo, is a response to that. Talk us through that.
Well, look, I think there's a lot of arrogant luxury in the market at the moment, and if I guess if we rewind maybe 8 years ago, I think part of the DNA of the house is how we started, and at the end of the day, we were two people that had a brand name, nobody knew it, and I think one of sort of the key points that really made the brand stand out at the time is obviously coupled with Tamara's incredible design talents and creativity was this experience that we were able to create and this ability to make people feel at ease when they come to the house. And it was difficult when we were talking about earlier is thinking outside of the box and being different, and people forget sometimes how important the experience is in parallel with the product, and that was a real focus for the brand at the time, is how do we create this fantastic experience, make people feel at ease. And I think it just sort of came naturally that when we had people at ease, they would tend to spend more, and so it sort of became definitely a part of the DNA of this house.
And I think also one of the things that's related to that is that you sort of really know your customer, you're inclusive, you're welcoming. And I know, Tamara, you've always said to me, you are your client, and it seems to me that's another key element in your success. You know your woman.
Yeah, very much so. I think it's important to obviously understand your customer base no matter what industry you're in. But, going back to what Michael was saying, at the start of the brand, we really wanted it to feel like a family and all of our customers to feel like a family. And they responded to that. And, customer service at the end of the day is free. So it was one way where we were able to compete with the bigger luxury brands.
And I was really interested to hear the other day that the biggest spending Ralph Russo customer at Harrods is actually 20 years old, which again I think is such a significant fact, because I think we think of couture as slightly a kind of an older woman's thing. It sounds a little bit fusty, if anything. And part of your thing has been to prove that very much doesn't have to be the case. How have you done that from an aesthetic perspective, first of all?
Well, I think it's always good to have youth within our designs as well. And I think, definitely we realised that when we started couture, there was a shift in the market. I think a lot of people assumed that couture was a dying industry, and we saw the opposite. We really did. With so much emerging markets and younger generations coming through, spending much more, we really, realised that and tailored our collections to that. But obviously we're also both young, so we design what we love.
Yeah.
And I think the customer the younger millennial customer these days wants to have an identity. They want to be unique and exclusive and have a voice. And I think couture, obviously we have the catwalk show, but couture is a large element of his custom design, and I think that gives this customer really that chance to be unique and express themselves the way they want to.
One of my favourite Tamara stories, which I'm just going to share with you, is that she has been serving her customer, since the age of 13, if I'm correct. She made her first sort of made-to-order piece, a chainmail skirt, at the age of 13 for a friend, wasn't it?
Yes.
In Sydney. And so, if there's proof positive that this woman knows what the customer wants, it's that she's been delivering it since the age of 13, which I kind of love.
Yeah, it's always something that I love to do, I have several generations of couture and fashion in my family, and so I grew up around it and I loved it, and whenever I could, I would be sketching and stitching and draping and all kinds of things, so it just came naturally.
And your mother and your grandmother both worked serving the great and good of Sydney, creating fabulous dresses, didn't they? So you sort of learnt right from the start that the consumer should be at the heart of the experience.
Yeah, very much so. And it was it was definitely still holds true today. Like definitely, we always put our customer first as well.
One of the other ways in which you've thought out of the box, Michael, is you're in London, not in Paris. I know when you first made that decision, some questions were asked by the French, unsurprisingly. Why London? Why not Paris for a couture brand?
I think look, it was a combination of things. Firstly, we were living here. It made sense. Two, the customer was visiting here, and I saw some slides in the last discussion as well of, this sort of the elite customer traveling a lot more through Europe and not so much just into London. But what we were finding is that, especially with couture when we were building that, and with the process in terms of needing fittings and this and that, the customer felt more comfortable coming to us because they were using London as a base for other things, whether it be holiday houses or education or whatever it was. So being here made them feel more comfortable in the whole entire process. And that was really one of the keys. I think we had some challenges along the way. I think with London as well is especially on the craftsmanship side, right from the beginning, it was challenging finding the right people to work with the right skill set.
Because those sort of petit mains, they're called, who form the foundation of couture, it is a quite remarkable skill set that's required, isn't it? And by definition, it's usually a Paris-based skill set.
Yeah, very limited when we first set up the brand here, actually, the skills, the craftsmen that we needed to build the company. That's now completely changed, I think. With our atelier now, I think, we're inundated with people wanting to work there, and which is great. And we've almost seen like a return to the youth wanting to learn the craft as opposed to just wanting to be the designer, which is.
I think it also
really
helped
great.
with the once we're sort of officially credited by the Chambre de Syndical.
Yeah.
I think it really became an attraction, being the only British brand with the accreditation.
Yeah.
It was suddenly we were this attraction for all of the rest of the craftsmen in Europe or internationally that may have previously wanted to move to London or work in London, but not wanted to leave haute couture. So we organically took a lot of the best craftsmen from Europe and other places around the world into London.
There's 45 nationalities in our team.
Amazing, amazing. And one of the many things that interests me about your story is almost that the sort of rule breaking that you've done, or maybe the rule bending, but anyway, something with the rules, has become a part of your story. And I think there's that thing when you start out as a brand, there are the models that you follow and there are things that you were told. And a lot of it is to follow the paths that have already been laid, as it were, by older brands. And actually what you guys have done is kind of put your fingers in your ears and said, well, actually, we believe we should do it this, and this way, in this place, blah, blah, blah. And, you sort of pulled it off. Was that just easy to just think, okay, we don't care that people are saying we should be in Paris and we should be doing this and we should be doing that. This is us.
It wasn't easy, that's for sure, but I think there are no rules. And I think that, that's the beauty and sort of one of the reasons we sort of experienced the success that we did is that, yes, there's a way to follow things. And I think staying true to yourself and the consistency of doing the same thing is part of the success of building a luxury brand.
But I think that all came from Michael a lot at the start, because obviously coming from the industry and studying fashion, and Michael coming from a business industry, when we set up the brand, he questioned a lot the ways of working and why I felt like we should do it a certain way, because that's what I knew. And, he really, really pushed it and said, we don't have to work like that and we don't have to do it like that, because he couldn't see the logic to some of the ways of working. And I think so then we went in our own direction.
I mean, what would you say is the equation between gut and head, for want of a better expression, or heart and head when you're setting up a luxury brand? Because I think, again, a lot of what you're told is head stuff. It's people saying, well, this is how it's been proven to be done. It seems to me that you got a lot of kind of gut and heart into some of the decisions that you made from a business perspective. Is that fair?
Yeah, there were times when you're told it's wrong and you're doing the wrong thing. Why are you doing it this way? You have the guts to just follow your instinct and do it. And I think that's what we did. We believed in it. We believed in keeping things simple and not complicating things. And it was really we we went the same way. Things, of course, changed along the way as they do, but it was definitely, follow your gut instincts.
And that really, it was both a bit from a business perspective and also a creative perspective, wasn't it? You felt there were things that weren't being done in couture, and you felt that you were the woman to do it.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's nice to hear.
I remember you saying to me once, every woman just wants to be beautiful. And it's funny, sort of in fashion, I think some brands get so hung up on the idea of, what's cool, what's cutting edge, whatever, that they forget that every woman wants to be beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think what's, the clients love about what we do is obviously, we understand what the woman wants as well. Obviously trends still matter, to us and things like that. But, we understood where the market was going quite early on, and where our client base was and what they needed, and so we stayed true to that.
And you interestingly, you kind of started in couture and then moved on to ready to wear, which is quite an unusual journey. Why did you do it that way around, and what's been the benefits of doing it that way around?
I think we're using couture as the real heart of the brand. It's really there to, it is a big business for us. It's a very big business for us, but it's...
My spies tell me that you're doing about over 250 couture outfits a month.
Not that many.
Really? Okay, well, my spies are wrong then. No, you're doing a lot.
Doing a lot.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot, and I think we're the largest. But we really use couture to create the aspiration. I mean, it really does fuel the rest of the business, and it was difficult along the way because for 7-8 years, we had to sort of sacrifice a lot of revenue, a lot of sales. Respect of, we'd have ladies come to us who want to spend £10,000 on a dress, and we'd have to say no.
Yeah.
When you're starting a business, it's difficult to do that.
Yeah.
And we sustained that and sort of weathered that storm. And in the long run, it was the much better thing to do because it really created the aspiration, the desire that we have now. And these days, we don't even need a store. With the amount of inquiries we get for the couture show, I mean, the spillover client there, for every 100 calls, we might get one or two sales of the couture. The other 99, 98, they buy into the brand with a shoe, a leather good, a ready to wear. So it was really, we needed that time to really build the dream and build the awareness, and now it monetizes itself.
But it also gave us a good base of data to kind of, before we launched wider product categories, about who our client was, what she wanted, where she was based, how she was shopping, what price point she was looking out for. And we collated all of that data before we launched ready to wear and leather goods and shoes. And so we had such a broad range of information to tailor our next product categories too, which was very helpful.
So as a designer, aside from the obvious differences around production and the handmade element, how did you tweak the aesthetic for ready to wear?
Well, obviously it's a much more accessible product, so it's more trend focused as opposed, couture is as well, but I think couture always has a slightly more traditional classic element to it. And so I think, and plus our couture client is very young, predominantly young. The age range is quite broad, but we have a really young couture buying client, which is really interesting. So, there's a lot of youth in the ready to wear as well. So all of that information really helped. Yeah.
And as someone who is your client, who does have a kind of just an innate understanding of what that woman wants, that said, has there been anything you've discovered over the years, or through data or through experience, through meeting your clients, about that sort of surprised you about them in terms of what they want or don't want, or has it always just been something that you thought, yeah, I knew that?
No, there's always things that surprise us, but the market's changing all the time. Clients changing all the time. You have new regions that have come up as big spending clients. Even in the last 2 years, we've seen a shift in who our couture buying client is, where they're from. You know.
So what's been the shift in the last 2 years?
Well, we've seen a lot more.
A lot more emerging market, but I think the
Yeah.
reason why is, I think why we've specifically seen it, is that our sort of philosophy was, you know, it's fine to see a couture show like you see on the screen here, you see it in a magazine, but until you see it in person, it's very different. You know, the quality of the, you know, the workmanship, you can only see it when you see the gowns in person. I think, you know, to come back to your first question, Anna, is, you know, this arrogant luxury, is that we did make it a lot more accessible, you know, because it's difficult to see a haute couture gown. You know, if you want to see one, you have to book an appointment in Paris or Italy. It's difficult to get an appointment.
And you've, of course, now got boutiques in different places, haven't you?
Yeah, and that sort of forms part of our retail strategies, but it's to educate the customer, because it's this customer who's coming from Africa, from South America, who can't see couture easily. So as soon as you put it in front of them, if they're walking past and they have it and they have the means to be able to do it, it's very difficult for them to walk back next door to the shop and buy a piece of ready-to-wear.
Yeah.
So putting it in front of it and making it more accessible.
You're getting them hooked, Michael.
We're getting them hooked. So that was really going against the grain, you know, because no other house was doing that. Couture has always been this sacred, you know, this sacred piece of clothing that's hidden away and it's very difficult to get, and we sort of spun that on its head and seen
data crunchers that you are. Do you know how many of your couture clients bought their first piece of couture from you?
Their first piece of couture.
As in, they've never bought couture before until they shopped.
From the emerging markets, it would be a high percentage.
Yeah.
You know, from sort of those markets, definitely a high percentage.
And so an old school luxury head would say, well, you know, the second you become too approachable, too touchy-feely, too friendly, you kind of lose the mystique, you lose the allure, and you lose the client. What would you say to that?
I think it's a balance. Yeah, I think it's balanced, and I think it's, you know, how it's presented as well. I mean, it's still, although we have made it more accessible, we still keep it very exclusive as well. So I think that definitely that fine balance is there, because the clients are buying into it in the end because of the fact that it's a unique, exclusive experience, and it's something that not everyone can have. So
One
I
of the
think the trick is both attracting and retaining.
Yeah.
You know, and what we're trying to do is attract them into the brand first, and then there's a separate conversation of how you retain them. And I think if you can get those two parts of the equation right, that's where it becomes.
And how do you retain them? What's that bit of the equation?
Well, this comes back to more the experience and the way we treat them and the customer service and this sort of non-arrogant luxury approach. And that sort of really is, you know, these days there's so many brands, there's so much competition, so many voices, and you know, and it's all becoming a little bit too commercial, and the feeling of luxury is not, you know, being brought back to its roots of, you know, this real personal touch of, you know, this one-on-one experience.
Because there is that, you know, one of the many questions in luxury today. Well, firstly, it's the experience thing, isn't it? And also it's the slow, fast thing. Yeah. And actually, if you're spending a lot of money, not even necessarily at the huge couture level, but, you know, a sort of lower luxury level, you're doing it to feel special, aren't you? And so it behoves the business to make people feel special. One of the things I love most about when you visit the Ralph Russo atelier is I think Michael, you might have started referring before I actually saw them to the bodies. Like, oh yes, the bodies. Sorry, what's this? This is a morgue, and of course the bodies are the wonderful mannequins that are. So every one of your couture women has their body tucked away in the atelier.
There's warehouses of them.
Which is quite surreal but wonderful, and so you can sort of fit on that when they're not there, and you can tweak and.
There's everyone you can possibly think of in those warehouses.
Yes, and how. There are some. I did see some very famous bodies when I was at the atelier. How important is the celebrity aspect? I mean, obviously you've had people like Naomi Campbell, Jennifer Lopez, you know, huge names wearing your clothes. Is that an important part of the business for you?
Yeah, I think celebrity brings great exposure, and I think that's you know, been, you know, something that's helped driven the brand name, especially in like large markets like the US and things like that.
Because the US is your biggest market now, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it you know, allows you to hit a really broad range of eyeballs, you know, in a relatively cost-effective way. in a credible way too also,
Yeah.
if you have the right people for the brand.
And again, significant in the US, you've got a boutique in Miami, haven't you, as well as in New York, which is that thing of signalling, actually, we're not just in the, the usual places,
Yeah.
you're kind of reaching out.
Well,
Well,
we
Miami's-
chose Miami also because, it's obviously South America is a very big market and been an emerging market for some time and they do a lot of shopping in Miami, so hence the reason why we chose Miami.
But also, we're bringing specifically for Miami the couture experience there, because what we're finding now is that, the bridal customer, the couture customer from South America, one, they're not so well educated on it. So two, giving them the ability to see it in Miami and actually touch and feel a couture piece allows them to buy into it. So, and whereas a lot of our competitors are still keeping it here in Europe and making it a lot more difficult to bring that customer into the product.
And I love this idea of education. How do you do that in a way? Because obviously these are highly successful, extremely wealthy, powerful people by definition. How do you educate someone without it feeling in any way patronising? And obviously, as you say, part of it is here are these amazing clothes, touch them, feel them. What more? How do you walk that line?
I think it's I think definitely the dress speaks for itself. It really draws the customer into wanting to ask more about it. And I think then once they're brought into this beauty of the piece and the workmanship and the craftsmanship, then it's what else is possible. Actually, well, we can change the color. If you want to have sleeves added onto it and it fits into the design, then we can do it. If you want to have something custom made that isn't part of the collection, it's all possible. So that it's more taking that dress that has driven you in and then sort of expanding on what else is possible.
And I suppose this idea of the collaborative experience, which again it seems to me to be the ultimate luxury experience, that as the consumer you can say, well, actually I love that, but I want it in green. What's not to like? We're going to move on to questions in a minute, but I've got to just share the brilliant female-focused geekery of Tamara by talking about her shoes. So Tamara, might get this wrong, but so she's wearing a 12 centimetre heel that feels like a 10 centimetre heel, and was the result of exhaustive experimentation.
Yes.
And I just love this idea. What does everyone want? She wants a heel that looks amazing, but isn't as agonising as it appears.
I could not stand to be in uncomfortable heels. When I would host events or dress up because I had clients or whatever it was, and I would be in heels for a long period of time, and that pain in your feet, and all you could think about was your feet instead of actually concentrating on having a conversation with someone, drove me crazy. So when I designed these, I went through about, I think it was 4 or 5 prototypes, and I wore them extensively to see if my feet got sore, and they didn't. And now all my clients say they're the most comfortable 12 centimetre heels that they've ever bought, which is nice to hear. Yeah.
I just think that's the ultimate illustration of how well this woman knows her clients.
Yeah.
So thank you. So 5 minutes for some questions. Who's going to put their hand up? There's a lady on the 3rd row. Yes, just wait for the microphone.
Hi, great brand. It's Jane Rafter from RLI. You're looking to open stores in Miami, New York, Monte Carlo. Looking forward, what other markets excite you the most, and what do you look for when you're going to take the brand internationally?
Good question. The markets excite us the most are the ones where the other houses are neglecting. We really see that as an opportunity. And I think, for a brand like us, where we're competing against brands with maybe 60, 100 years of history, we have to identify markets that are, where we can penetrate easily. We can, we're very confident in the product, so if we can bring the right product to the right market and have as little competition as possible. Miami, the South American market was a good example, and the couture example of they've got the money to do it, but no one's offering them the product. So this was the reason we focused on Miami. And same with the Asian customer. They're a little bit more, they're more advanced, but if we're talking couture specifically, it's hard to get a couture piece out there. So we're looking at markets where that doesn't exist and sort of coupling it with giving the product that is more difficult to get from the other houses.
And you're opening in Hong Kong, aren't you? Presumably with that very Asian market in the crosshairs.
But we see a lot of, we talk about India as well, and India is a booming market. There's over 1 billion people there.
Yeah.
And it's a market. It's a big market, and it's not.
It's one of the most interesting luxury markets.
And also, it has that couture thinking in its DNA, doesn't it? And the whole culture of the fantastically brilliant weddings that go on for 3 months.
It does.
Yeah, yeah. Would you open? Would a store in India be a thing, or do you think more?
We're looking there. We've got a huge following, and there's definitely a huge demand. So again, if we can make that experience and that transition for the customer easier, whether it be our store there or just making it easier and more accessible to get, and it's definitely a big market.
Yeah, I mean it's great in a way. This contradiction, it's sort of the ease of availability, but also the immense kind of story difficulty, intricacy of the product. I think so much of the modern luxury story is about those sort of contradictions, isn't it?
Yeah.
And a lot of brands don't kind of, they sort of do the slow bit, not the fast bit, not the slow bit. They don't sort of join the dots. Any more questions? There's a lady right in the middle, so it's going to be really difficult to get the thing to her. Or not.
Can I just ask how you set your price initially? Particularly with such a high price point, how you preserve the price point and when I was able to really build up the client base?
It's we wanted to grow the brand organically. We wanted to, when we set up the brand, we didn't want to go guns a-blazing and kind of, pour go in a direction. We wanted to take it slow, set up the brand organically, and really we didn't have a collection to start with. We didn't invest money into collections. We didn't do anything like that, which was very different to, I'm sure, how other brands have been set up. But, we started with, us, and
it was literally a pen and paper, and Tamara designing something on some.
And I happened to, we happened to meet someone who, at an event, who loved what I was wearing. She asked me about it. I did some sketches for her. She bought all of those, and then she told all of her friends, and then it was just a word of mouth thing.
It went through word of mouth, but I think the reason it went through word of mouth is because it comes back to this experience.
Yeah.
It was such a unique experience, and we keep talking about this experience and this process, but the reason it was word of mouth is, yes, the designs were incredible and the product was great, but it was the way that the customer was treated, the way they felt unique and exclusive, and when you feel that way, you talk about it.
Yeah.
And that sort of fueled the growth.
And it was very much a word of mouth thing, and we grew very fast at a very young age, and purely via word of mouth. And it wasn't until we were officially invited by the Chambre Syndicale to show at Paris Couture Week as the first British brand in 100 years. We'd never done a collection before. So it was our first ever collection, official collection, yeah. So we'd done a lot of private collections, obviously, but yeah.
So a couple more questions before we finish, if anyone's got a question. I can't see any more hands. Surely we haven't answered every question. God, we're brilliant. Oh, sorry, yes.
So when I've had the great privilege of coming around to your atelier, and I can't believe that you have an atelier that size in the middle of London. I mean, that's just, not just on the fringes of London, right in the, the beating heart of it. How many of your couture customers get the opportunity to come around and see those incredible craftspeople at work? Because that really blew my mind, seeing the quality of what your ladies were producing. It was like, I don't know, it's like being in a film with all the white coats and the extraordinary embroidery and things like that. Do you let your couture customers come and see the workshop?
Sadly, we don't. But what we try and do is, is give that, and it's sort of part of keeping the mystique. It's the balance of how do you, keep the mystique and not show it all, but give enough that, shows the quality and craftsmanship of what we do. And, we do that through social media, through different video materials or whatever, but it's something we've always held quite close and kept quite secretive to our clients, but just give them the right balance of enough to keep them intrigued.
Stirring the pot.
Yeah, they're not in the kitchen with us.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, the sort of hierarchy in a way, isn't it? Because I think it's been particularly tricky for luxury to work out. So we we've gone from being quite a hierarchical world, and luxury served the top of the hierarchy, and in the old sense of the word of hierarchy. And now the question is, you can't do arrogant luxury anymore in the way that you once could, and yet you still have to maintain the mystique, as you say. Just to finish, what's the sort of top lesson that you've both learned in your almost 10 years bestriding the world of amazing dresses?
Well, I think in terms of going back to the arrogant luxury statement, I would say people never forget how you make them feel. And so whether that's through the product or how you treat them or whatever touch point the brand has with a consumer, I think that's very important lesson that I've learned anyway.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think just, not to say that there's a hierarchy, but for brands not to forget the importance of, as you say, making somebody feel good. And as Tamara said earlier, and it's what we say to our team every day, customer service is free. No matter, if we've got a competitor who has a bigger marketing budget, at the end of the day, we're all on equal playing field with customer service. So where we can perhaps, be number one is in the customer service. And if we can be number one there, the rest will follow. So it's a big priority for us.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. Fascinating.
Thank you.